Zara Johnson, daughter of tech CEO Malcolm Johnson, sits frozen as the flight attendant demands she leave the plane. White couple nearby films the incident, smirking. Malcolm's phone buzzes with viral video alert. Flight attendant's husband suddenly loses everything. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever witnessed injustice in action. Let's explore how one moment of discrimination unleashed a storm that nobody saw coming. The morning sun cast golden rays through the windows of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport as Zara Johnson rushed toward her gate. Her natural curls bounced with each hurried step, designer laptop bag slung over one shoulder containing the presentation she had spent weeks perfecting. At 21, the brilliant Stanford computer science student was already making waves in Silicon Valley, though she constantly felt the need to prove herself beyond what her white classmates experienced. Final boarding call for Southwest Airlines Flight 423 to San Francisco, the announcement echoed through the terminal. Zara quickened her pace. This wasn't just any flight, it was carrying her to potentially the most important interview of her young career. TechFuture, one of Silicon Valley's most prestigious firms, rarely offered internships to undergraduates, but her algorithm for predictive analytics had caught their attention. Landing this position would set her career trajectory years ahead of her peers. Her father, Malcolm Johnson, had founded Cyberfusion from nothing, building it into a tech empire valued at $3 billion. But even with his success and her own impressive credentials, Zara knew what awaited her in the tech world. Subtle exclusion, backhanded compliments about being articulate, and constant questioning of her abilities. Cutting it close, the gate agent remarked, scanning her boarding pass. The woman's expression shifted slightly when she saw Zara's premium seating assignment. First class is to your left once you board. Zara nodded politely, accustomed to the subtle looks of surprise when people realized she wasn't flying economy. She made her way down the jetway, mentally rehearsing key points from her presentation. The premium cabin was half full when she boarded. Zara found her seat, 3A, a window position with extra legroom. As she stored her laptop in the overhead compartment, she noticed a white couple across the aisle watching her. The woman, mid-40s with highlighted blonde hair and designer sunglasses perched on her head, whispered something to her husband, who smirked in response. "Excuse me," Zara said politely to the flight attendant arranging items in a nearby galley. The attendant, whose name tag read Stephanie Reynolds, continued organizing without acknowledging her. "Excuse me," Zara repeated, slightly louder. Reynolds turned with an expression of barely concealed annoyance. "Yes. Could I please have some water before takeoff? I need to take medication." "You'll have to wait until we're in the air," Reynolds replied curtly, despite the fact that she had just served pre-flight champagne to the white couple across the aisle. "It's for medication," Zara explained calmly. "It will just take a second." "I said you'll have to wait," Reynolds snapped, loud enough that several passengers turned to look. Zara settled into her seat, feeling the familiar discomfort of being singled out. Her father's words from their last dinner together echoed in her mind, "Baby girl, you're going to face more obstacles than your white counterparts. That's just reality. But remember, you're twice as qualified and 10 times as determined. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself." 15 minutes passed, and the plane remained at the gate. Reynolds busied herself attending to other passengers, particularly doting on the white couple, whom Zara now overheard being addressed as Mr. and Mrs. Blackwell. They kept glancing in her direction between whispered conversations with Reynolds. "Can I get you anything else, Mrs. Blackwell?" Reynolds asked warmly. "This champagne is perfect, thank you," Mrs. Blackwell replied, her eyes darting toward Zara with something like satisfaction. Another 10 minutes passed. The captain announced a minor mechanical delay, assuring passengers they would depart shortly. Zara's throat felt increasingly dry, and she remembered her father's other advice, stand up for yourself, but always remain calm. The minute you show anger, you've lost. She pressed the call button. Reynolds approached with visible reluctance. I really need that water for my medication, Zara said. Is there any way I could get some while we're waiting? Reynolds' expression hardened. You're being disruptive. I've told you our policy. I'm not trying to be disruptive, Zara replied evenly. I just need water for medical reasons. Well, you're causing a scene, Reynolds said, voice rising. And I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. Zara hadn't raised her voice at all. She noticed Mrs. Blackwell nudging her husband, who was now openly watching the interaction with undisguised interest. I'm speaking at a normal volume, Zara said, maintaining her composure despite the growing knot in her stomach. I just need water for my medication. Reynolds leaned in, speaking just low enough that other passengers couldn't hear clearly. Listen, we both know you don't belong up here. So why don't you just behave yourself? The words hit Zara like a physical blow. The implication was unmistakable, and all too familiar. Not because of anything she had done wrong, but because of who she was. The plane remained at the gate, tension building in the cabin as the delay stretched on. Zara noticed Mr. Blackwell whisper something to his wife, who nodded and began rummaging through her purse. She pulled out her phone, angling it subtly in Zara's direction. Zara took a deep breath and tried to focus on her presentation instead of the growing hostility around her. The Tech Future interview was too important to jeopardize over this incident. She opened her water bottle, finding it empty. She had finished it during her dash through the airport to make the flight. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, "Folks, we're still working on that minor issue. Should be about 10 more minutes. Flight attendants, please remain seated." Reynolds, however, continued moving through the cabin, stopping to chat again with the Blackwells. Their conversation was just quiet enough that Zara couldn't make out the words, but the occasional glances in her direction made the subject clear enough. The tension in the cabin was palpable now, and Zara felt increasingly isolated. Several passengers were now watching the situation unfold with uncomfortable expressions, but no one intervened. The familiar weight of being the only black person in a hostile space settled on her shoulders, a weight her father had carried his entire career, and now she bore as well. The intercom crackled again. "Cabin crew, prepare for departure." Relief washed over Zara. Perhaps now the focus would shift away from her and toward the 6-hour flight ahead. She opened her laptop to review her presentation one last time before takeoff. Reynolds approached her seat again, this time with deliberate slowness. "Ma'am, I need you to put that away now." "Of course," Zara replied, moving to close her laptop. "I was just about to." "Now," Reynolds interrupted sharply. "You've been non-compliant with crew instructions since boarding." Several heads turned at the flight attendant's raised voice. Zara felt heat rising to her cheeks as she quickly stowed her laptop. "I wasn't being non-compliant," she said quietly. "I was closing it." Reynolds placed her hands on her hips. "Your attitude is becoming a problem." Mrs. Blackwell was now openly recording with her phone, while her husband watched with barely concealed satisfaction. The recording light glinted in Zara's peripheral vision. "I don't have an attitude," Zara responded, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I'm just trying to follow instructions." "Well, you're not doing a very good job of it," Reynolds said loudly. "I've had to speak to you multiple times already." An elderly black man across the aisle cleared his throat. "Excuse me, miss, but the young lady hasn't done anything wrong that I can see." Reynolds ignored him completely. "Do you even belong in first class?" she asked Zara, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. The question hung in the air, laden with implication. Zara felt as though she'd been slapped. She'd encountered racism before, the subtle kind that came with questioning glances and backhanded compliments, but rarely this blatant and public. "I have a ticket for this seat," Zara said, pulling out her boarding pass with trembling fingers. "Seat 3A. "Let me see that." Reynolds snatched the ticket from Zara's hand, examining it with exaggerated scrutiny while passengers watched the humiliating spectacle unfold. Mrs. Blackwell angled her phone for a better shot, smiling slightly as she captured Zara's discomfort. Her husband leaned forward, clearly enjoying the show. "This looks in order," Reynolds finally admitted, returning the boarding pass with obvious reluctance. "But your behavior certainly isn't first-class quality." "What behavior?" Zara asked, her voice finally breaking slightly. "I asked for water for medication and was closing my laptop when you asked." "You're being argumentative and threatening," Reynolds declared loudly. "Threatening?" Zara repeated in disbelief. "How am I threatening anyone?" "She does seem rather aggressive," Mrs. Blackwell chimed in, still recording. "I don't feel safe." "Neither do I," her husband agreed. "Something should be done." The elderly man tried again. "Now wait just a minute. This young lady hasn't." "Sir, please stay out of this," Reynolds cut him off. "This is a security matter." "Security matter?" Zara's heart began to race. This was escalating beyond anything she could have imagined when she boarded the plane. Reynolds picked up the cabin phone and spoke briefly into it. Moments later, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the additional delay. We need to return to the gate to address a security concern." A collective groan rose from the passengers. Zara felt dozens of eyes on her, most assuming she was the cause of their delayed departure. Mrs. Blackwell was still recording, capturing every moment of Zara's humiliation. "This is ridiculous," the elderly man muttered. "Young lady, you don't deserve this treatment." Reynolds returned to stand over Zara's seat. "Security will meet us at the gate. You'll need to deplane." "What?" Zara's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Why?" "Threatening behavior toward crew members is a federal offense," Reynolds said loudly. "We take these matters very seriously." "I haven't threatened anyone," Zara protested, panic rising in her chest. "Please, I have an important interview in San Francisco. I can't miss this flight." "You should have thought about that before causing a disruption," Reynolds replied coldly. The plane began moving back toward the gate. Zara sat in stunned silence, tears threatening to spill despite her determination not to cry in front of everyone watching. Mrs. Blackwell continued filming, occasionally whispering to her husband, who nodded with satisfaction. "This is how it should be handled," Mr. Blackwell said, loud enough for Zara to hear. "These people need to learn their place." "These people." The words cut through Zara like a knife. In that moment, she wasn't a Stanford student with a 4.0 GPA. She wasn't the daughter of a successful CEO. She was just another black person being put in her place. When the plane reached the gate, 2 security officers boarded immediately. Reynolds pointed directly at Zara. "That's her," she said. "She's been threatening the crew and refusing to comply with safety instructions." "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us," one of the officers said, his hand hovering near his belt. "Please," Zara began, "there's been a misunderstanding." "I haven't." "Now, ma'am," the second officer interrupted. "Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." Zara gathered her belongings with shaking hands. As she stood, Mr. Blackwell began to applaud slowly. Several other passengers joined in, clearly relieved that the problem was being removed so they could continue their journey. "Good riddance," someone muttered. Zara walked down the aisle, dignity in tatters, painfully aware of Mrs. Blackwell's phone still recording her exit. The elderly black man shook his head sadly as she passed. "This isn't right," he said to no one in particular. "This just isn't right." The security officers flanked her closely as they walked up the jetway, as though she might attempt to escape or become violent at any moment. Other travelers in the terminal stopped to stare at the spectacle. Once they reached the gate area, one officer spoke into his radio. "Situation contained. Passenger removed without incident." Without incident. The irony wasn't lost on Zara. The entire ordeal had been an incident from start to finish, one manufactured by Reynolds and eagerly supported by the Blackwells. "Can I call my father?" Zara asked, voice barely above a whisper. The officers exchanged glances. "Make it quick," one finally said. With trembling fingers, Zara dialed Malcolm's number. He answered on the second ring. "Baby girl, aren't you supposed to be in the air by now?" Zara tried to respond, but a sob escaped instead. "Zara?" Malcolm's voice sharpened with concern. "What's happened?" "Dad," she managed, tears finally spilling over. "They kicked me off the plane. They said I was threatening the crew." "Dad, I didn't do anything wrong. They didn't want me there." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. When Malcolm spoke again, his voice was deadly calm. "Where are you now?" "Gate B23. With security. I'm on my way. Don't say anything else to anyone. I'm calling our lawyer right now." As Zara ended the call, she noticed her phone buzzing with notifications. The video was already spreading online, edited to begin mid-confrontation, making it appear as though Zara was being belligerent and uncooperative. The damage was done. Even if she could get another flight, she would miss her interview. Her carefully constructed future was crumbling, all because a flight attendant and two privileged passengers couldn't bear the sight of a young black woman in first class. Malcolm Johnson sat at the head of the conference table in Cyberfusion's Atlanta headquarters, half listening as his CFO walked the board through quarterly projections. 20 years of building this company from nothing had earned him this seat, though the journey had been far from easy. As one of the few black CEOs in the tech industry, he'd faced obstacles his white counterparts never had to consider. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He normally wouldn't answer during a board meeting, but Zara only called during business hours for emergencies. Excusing himself, he stepped into the hallway. "Baby girl, aren't you supposed to be in the air by now?" The sob that answered him sent ice through his veins. As Zara explained what had happened, Malcolm's expression darkened. The board members, visible through the glass wall, exchanged concerned glances as they watched their normally composed CEO transform before their eyes. "Where are you now?" he asked, his voice deadly calm. "Gate B23. With security. I'm on my way. Don't say anything else to anyone. I'm calling our lawyer right now." Malcolm ended the call and immediately dialed Jason Williams, Cyberfusion's chief legal counsel. "Jason, I need you to meet me at Hartsfield-Jackson immediately. Gate B23. My daughter's been removed from a flight under false pretenses. It's racial profiling, clear as day." Without waiting for a response, Malcolm returned to the boardroom. Meeting adjourned. Family emergency. The board members knew better than to question him. Malcolm Johnson might be measured and strategic in business, but when it came to his family, he was unmovable. "Sir, should we reschedule for tomorrow?" his assistant asked as he strode toward the elevator. "Indefinitely," Malcolm replied, jabbing the button. "And get me the CEO of Southwest Airlines on the phone. Now." As the elevator descended, memories flooded back. Memories he tried to shield Zara from, though he knew she'd face her own versions eventually. 25 years earlier, fresh out of MIT with a groundbreaking algorithm and dreams of changing the world, Malcolm had been denied meetings with venture capitalists who suddenly became too busy when he showed up in person. He remembered the startup accelerator that had invited him to join, then assigned him to clean up duties while white founders got introductions to investors. He remembered being mistaken for janitorial staff in his own building, even after Cyberfusion went public. Malcolm had worked twice as hard for half the recognition his entire life. He'd hoped things would be different for Zara's generation, but today proved nothing had changed. His phone rang as he reached his car. "Mr. Johnson, I have Southwest's executive office on the line. Malcolm Johnson for your CEO," he said, sliding behind the wheel of his Tesla. "I'm afraid Mr. Harrison is unavailable," a polished female voice replied. "This is Vanessa Taylor, Chief of Customer Relations. How can I help you? Ms. Taylor, my daughter Zara Johnson was just removed from Flight 423 to San Francisco under false pretenses by one of your flight attendants. This is clear racial discrimination, and I expect immediate action. A pause. I'm very sorry to hear about your experience, Mr. Johnson. We take all customer concerns seriously. This isn't a concern, Malcolm interrupted, pulling out of the parking garage. This is a civil rights violation. Your employee publicly humiliated my daughter and had her removed by security for doing absolutely nothing wrong. I understand you're upset, sir, but there are procedures. My lawyer will be explaining your legal exposure within the hour. In the meantime, I suggest you review your security footage and prepare a formal apology. This incident will cost your airline significantly more than goodwill if not addressed immediately. Malcolm ended the call before she could respond. Traffic crawled on the highway leading to the airport. He slammed his palm against the steering wheel in frustration, then took a deep breath. Losing his composure wouldn't help Zara. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant, PR team activated. Jason heading to airport now. Then another notification appeared, a social media alert mentioning Zara's name. With growing dread, Malcolm tapped the link. The video began mid-confrontation, carefully edited to show Zara appearing agitated while the flight attendant maintained a professional demeanor. Comments were already flooding in, most condemning the entitled black woman, who was playing the race card. Malcolm's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The Blackwells, whoever they were, had deliberately framed the narrative against his daughter. His daughter, who had never been anything but exceptional, reduced to a harmful stereotype for social media entertainment. By the time Malcolm reached the airport, Jason was already with Zara in a private airport lounge. She sat with her shoulders hunched, smaller than he had ever seen her. "Daddy," she said when he entered, voice breaking. The strong, confident young woman who had left for her flight that morning was gone, replaced by a wounded girl who suddenly seemed much younger than her 21 years. Malcolm enveloped her in his arms, feeling her tears soak through his shirt. "I've got you, baby girl." Over her shoulder, he met Jason's eyes. The lawyer gave a slight nod, indicating they had grounds for action. "Sir," an airport official approached hesitantly, recognition dawning on his face. "Mr. Johnson. I didn't realize. We can arrange immediate transportation on the next flight to San Francisco if you'd like." Malcolm fixed the man with a cold stare. "Now you want to help? Where was this courtesy when my daughter was being publicly humiliated and escorted out by security?" "Sir, I apologize. We weren't aware of who she was." Malcolm finished. "So this treatment is acceptable for anyone who isn't the daughter of a CEO? Is that what you're saying?" The official stammered, "And no, that's not what I meant." "What's your name?" Malcolm asked. "Robert Collins, sir. Assistant Terminal Manager." "Well, Mr. Collins, I don't want special treatment. I want accountability. I want the security footage from that plane. I want statements from the crew and passengers. And I want it all done through proper channels, documented every step of the way." Collins nodded rapidly. "Of course, sir. I'll make those arrangements immediately." After the manager hurried away, Malcolm sat beside Zara, taking her hands in his. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." As Zara recounted the events, Malcolm listened without interrupting, though his jaw tightened progressively. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. "I'm sorry, Daddy," Zara finally whispered. "I know how important appearances are. I tried to stay calm, like you always said." "No," Malcolm said firmly. "Don't apologize. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. But the interview. I worked so hard. We'll deal with that. But first, we're going to address what happened today." Jason cleared his throat. "The airline is already in damage control mode. Their legal team has reached out, suggesting an immediate settlement. Malcolm shook his head. No settlement. No NDAs. This isn't about money. What is it about, then? Zara asked softly. Malcolm looked at his daughter, seeing in her the future he had always fought for, a future where she wouldn't have to fight these same battles. Change, he said simply. Real, lasting change. The kind that only happens when people are held accountable. He squeezed her hands. What happened to you today isn't just going to disappear. We're going to turn it into something meaningful. Zara nodded, strength returning to her eyes. Like father, like daughter, resilience ran in the Johnson family. They thought they could shame us, Malcolm said. But they've never understood what we're made of. Entitled black woman kicked off flight after threatening crew. The headline blazed across social media platforms, accompanied by the Blackwell's edited video. Within hours, it had accumulated millions of views, thousands of shares, and a comments section filled with vitriol. Another one playing the race card when she doesn't get her way. First class is for people with first-class behavior. This is why I hate flying these days. Entitled people making scenes. The hashtag airline Karen trended nationwide, with Zara's image becoming the latest example of supposed black entitlement in the eyes of a public eager to consume conflict without context. Turn it off, Malcolm advised, watching Zara scroll through comments with increasing distress. They had relocated to Cyberfusion's Atlanta offices, where the PR team was working frantically to address the situation. I can't, Zara replied, voice hollow. It's like watching a car accident. These people don't know me at all, but they're so certain I'm this horrible person. Malcolm gently took her phone. This isn't productive. Jason and the team are gathering evidence. The truth will come out. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Zara's college friends had recognized her in the viral video. Aisha Patel, Zara's roommate, immediately began mobilizing their network. That's not what happened, she posted furiously. I've known Zara Johnson for 3 years. She's the most level-headed person I know. This video is edited to make her look bad. Aisha's post gained traction among Stanford students and faculty, creating a counter-narrative to the viral video. Hashtag I Stand With Zara began appearing in posts, though it was still dwarfed by the original hashtag. Back in Atlanta, Malcolm's PR team had identified the Blackwells. Thomas Blackwell was a vice president at Meridian Financial, one of the country's largest investment firms. His wife, Amanda Blackwell, worked as a high-end real estate agent catering to Silicon Valley executives. Sir, there's more, Malcolm's head of security reported. We've identified the flight attendant as Stephanie Reynolds. Her husband, Bradley Reynolds, is employed at Skynet Technologies. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. Skynet was Cyberfusion's main competitor, and the timing wasn't coincidental. In 3 weeks, Cyberfusion was scheduled to unveil a revolutionary security protocol that would likely make Skynet's main product line obsolete. This wasn't random, Malcolm realized. Zara was targeted. As the day progressed, Malcolm received calls from several black tech executives offering private support, but public statements were notably absent. His white colleagues, with few exceptions, maintained radio silence. They're afraid to get involved, Jason explained. Nobody wants to be associated with controversy. Controversy, Malcolm repeated bitterly. Is that what we're calling racism now? Jason sighed. Malcolm, we could settle this quietly. The airline is practically begging to write a check. You could protect Zara from further exposure. Malcolm paced the conference room. And what message would that send? That discrimination is acceptable as long as the victim gets paid afterward. That if you have enough money, you can buy your way out of accountability. Before Jason could respond, Malcolm's assistant entered. Sir, Stephanie Reynolds is giving a live interview on BNC News right now. Malcolm turned to the wall-mounted television as Reynolds appeared, looking appropriately somber in a conservative suit. "I would never discriminate against anyone," she was saying. "I've been in this industry for 15 years without incident. This passenger became hostile when I enforced standard airline protocols." "What about allegations that you served other first-class passengers water before takeoff but refused Ms. Johnson's request?" the interviewer asked. "That's simply untrue," Reynolds replied smoothly. "Ms. Johnson became confrontational when asked to follow the same rules as everyone else. As flight crew, our first priority is passenger safety." Malcolm muted the television, disgust evident on his face. "She's doubling down." Meanwhile, Zara sat in a smaller office, staring at her laptop. The Tech Future interview she had prepared for so meticulously had been scheduled to start 30 minutes ago. She had emailed their HR department explaining the situation, but received only a brief reply, "We'll keep your resume on file for future opportunities." Her phone rang, Aisha calling from Stanford. "Z, are you okay? This is insane." "I've been better," Zara admitted. "The interview I've been working toward for months. Gone. And now I'm apparently the internet's villain of the day." "People who know you aren't buying it," Aisha assured her. "Professor Williams actually addressed it in class today, telling everyone this is a perfect example of media manipulation and racial bias." The support helped, but it couldn't erase the comments Zara had read, or the opportunity she had lost, or the humiliation she had endured in front of a plane full of strangers. Do you believe Zara was targeted because of her race? Comment number 1 if you think racism was at play here, or number 2 if you think the airline was just following protocol. Hit that like button if you've ever experienced or witnessed discrimination while traveling, and subscribe to see how this shocking story unfolds. The question remains, was this just a misunderstanding, or part of something much more sinister? The evidence that's about to emerge will shock you. 3 days after the incident, Malcolm sat in his home office surrounded by documents and digital evidence his security team had uncovered. The connections were becoming impossible to ignore. Bradley Reynolds, Stephanie's husband, wasn't just an employee at Skynet Technologies, he was their deputy director of corporate security with access to sensitive competitor information. Thomas Blackwell's financial firm, Meridian, handled a significant portion of Skynet's investments and had recently increased their position substantially. Malcolm spread the documents across his desk, the pattern emerging with disturbing clarity. "They're all connected," he murmured. His security chief, David Washington, nodded grimly. "There's more. 3 weeks ago, someone accessed Zara's academic records at Stanford using credentials belonging to a Skynet recruiter. The day after, the Blackwells booked first-class tickets on Zara's flight, the exact same flight she was taking to her Tech Future interview. They knew her schedule, Malcolm realized. They planned this. The Johnson family was scheduled to appear at the annual Tech Innovation Conference in San Francisco the following month. Malcolm was delivering the keynote address, with Zara slated to participate in a panel on emerging programmers. Cyberfusion planned to unveil their revolutionary security protocol at the event, a protocol that would render Skynet's primary security product obsolete. This wasn't about a water request or airplane etiquette, Malcolm said, anger simmering beneath his controlled exterior. This was corporate sabotage disguised as a racial incident. They knew exactly which buttons to push. The timing aligns perfectly, David confirmed. Discredit the Johnsons before the conference, damage Cyberfusion's reputation, and prevent the new protocol from overshadowing Skynet. Malcolm leaned back in his chair, mind racing. I want a meeting with Victor Barnes. Today. 2 hours later, Malcolm sat across from Skynet's CEO in the neutral territory of a private club in downtown Atlanta. Barnes, a thin man with carefully styled gray hair, maintained an expression of polite concern. Malcolm, these accusations are outrageous, Barnes said after hearing Malcolm out. Are you suggesting my company orchestrated some elaborate conspiracy involving an airline incident? That's absurd. Malcolm slid a folder across the table. Bradley Reynolds reports directly to your CSO. His wife just happened to be working the flight my daughter was removed from. The Blackwells, who filmed and distributed the video, have significant financial ties to Skynet. And someone from your recruiting department accessed my daughter's records days before the incident. Barnes glanced at the documents, his confident expression faltering slightly. Coincidences? Nothing more. Victor, we've known each other for 15 years. Do I strike you as a man who believes in coincidences like these? Barnes closed the folder, pushing it back. What exactly are you implying, Malcolm? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Your company targeted my daughter to get to me and Cyberfusion before our protocol launch. That's a serious accusation, Barnes said, straightening his tie. One that could be considered defamatory without substantial proof. Which is why I haven't gone public with it. Yet. Barnes leaned forward, dropping his voice. Be careful, Malcolm. If you pursue this line of speculation, we would be forced to respond with counteractions of our own. Do you really want to drag your daughter further into the public eye? The video has already done considerable damage to her reputation. The threat was thinly veiled but unmistakable. Malcolm maintained his composure with effort. Are you threatening me, Victor? Merely pointing out realities, Barnes replied smoothly. These things can escalate quickly. Sometimes it's better to let sleeping dogs lie. Malcolm stood, buttoning his suit jacket. I've never been one to ignore a rabid dog, sleeping or otherwise. You targeted my family, Victor. That was your first mistake. As Malcolm left the meeting, his phone buzzed with a notification. Cyberfusion's stock had dropped 8% since market opening, investors responding to rumors that the company's leadership was distracted by personal matters. Back at Cyberfusion headquarters, Malcolm faced growing pressure from his board. Lawrence Winters, the company's chairman, had called an emergency meeting. Malcolm, we're concerned, Winters began, surrounded by nodding board members. Your attention seems divided, and the market is noticing. My attention is exactly where it needs to be, Malcolm replied evenly. The incident with Zara is unfortunate, Winters continued, but perhaps it would be best to handle it privately and refocus on business matters. The incident with Zara isn't separate from business matters, Malcolm countered. It was a deliberate attack on my family to undermine this company before our protocol launch. Several board members exchanged skeptical glances. Malcolm, Winters said carefully, with all due respect, that sounds rather paranoid. Flight attendants deal with unruly passengers every day. To suggest some corporate conspiracy. I have evidence, Malcolm interrupted, sliding copies of his findings to each board member. Skynet is behind this. They used racial profiling as a weapon because they knew it would be effective. They knew people would believe the worst about a young black woman without question. As the board members reviewed the documents, Malcolm's phone rang. It was Zara. Dad, something weird just happened, she said when he stepped into the hallway. I was checking my Stanford portal, and it shows someone accessed my records last week. Not just grades, but my complete schedule, including my flights and interviews. I know, Malcolm replied grimly. We just discovered the same thing. It was someone from Skynet. A shocked silence followed. Skynet? As in, your competitor Skynet? Why would they care about my schedule? Because you're my daughter. And they're trying to get to me through you. The revelation hit Zara hard. So what happened on that plane? It wasn't random. They targeted me specifically. Yes. I'm sorry, baby girl. You got caught in corporate warfare. After ending the call, Malcolm returned to the boardroom. The atmosphere had shifted noticeably. The evidence was compelling, if not yet conclusive. If this is true, Winters said slowly, then Skynet has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. It's true, Malcolm assured him. And I intend to hold them accountable. How? Another board member asked. Going public could damage both companies, and the optics are complex. Many will still see this as playing the race card. Malcolm surveyed the room, largely white, largely male, largely people who had never experienced the kind of discrimination Zara had faced. With respect, he said firmly, I didn't build this company by avoiding complex situations. Skynet used racism as a weapon against my family. They assumed I would either retreat in shame or settle quietly to avoid further exposure. They were wrong on both counts. He stood, commanding the room with his presence. I'm not stepping back from this fight. The only question is whether this board stands with me or against me. One by one, the board members nodded their reluctant agreement. Malcolm Johnson had built Cyberfusion from nothing into a tech powerhouse. His judgment, however unconventional, had proven correct too many times to dismiss. As the meeting adjourned, Malcolm returned to his office where Zara waited, still processing the revelation that she had been deliberately targeted. What happens now? She asked. Malcolm smiled for the first time in days. Now, we turn the tables. Mr. Johnson, I think we found something. Malcolm looked up from his desk where he'd been reviewing legal documents. David Washington stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, excitement evident in his normally stoic demeanor. Show me. David placed the tablet on Malcolm's desk. We obtained the complete security footage from the aircraft. The airline was reluctant until our legal team applied pressure, but it tells a very different story than the viral video. The footage showed the entire interaction from multiple angles. Unlike the Blackwell's edited version, the complete video clearly showed Stephanie Reynolds serving water to other first-class passengers while repeatedly denying Zara's polite requests. It captured Reynolds' whispered conversations with the Blackwells, their strategic positioning to record the interaction, and most damning of all, Reynolds leaning in to tell Zara she didn't belong in first class. This changes everything, Malcolm said, watching the footage again. But it's still their word against ours regarding what was said. Not exactly, David replied with the hint of a smile. Remember the elderly black passenger who tried to defend Zara? Yes. He spoke up but was ignored. His name is Dr. William Parker, retired professor of sociology from Howard University. He recorded audio on his phone during the incident. David tapped the tablet again, and clear audio began playing. Reynolds' voice came through with perfect clarity. Listen, we both know you don't belong up here. So why don't you just behave yourself? Malcolm's expression hardened at hearing the words directed at his daughter. Contact Dr. Parker. I want to thank him personally. Already done, sir. He's willing to come forward publicly. As David left, Malcolm's phone rang. The caller ID showed Danielle Washington, a respected journalist who had covered the tech industry for 2 decades. Danielle, Malcolm greeted her. Perfect timing. Malcolm, I've been following what happened to Zara. Off the record, something doesn't add up about that viral video. You have good instincts, Malcolm replied. Are you interested in the real story? The complete, unedited version? Always. What are we talking about? Corporate sabotage, racial profiling as a weapon, and the lengths companies will go to maintain market dominance. Danielle's interest was piqued. Send me what you have. If it checks out, I'll run the story. Over the next 48 hours, Malcolm's team assembled a comprehensive dossier. Beyond the airline footage and Dr. Parker's audio recording, they discovered 3 other passengers had captured video from different angles. 2 tech-savvy college students seated behind Zara had recorded Reynolds' deliberate provocations on their phones. Meanwhile, an independent investigation revealed that Stephanie Reynolds had a history of complaints from minority passengers, though none had resulted in disciplinary action. The airline had quietly settled several discrimination claims involving Reynolds over the past 5 years. More damning still, Malcolm's security team uncovered a series of text messages between Bradley Reynolds and Thomas Blackwell from the day before the flight, target confirmed on SW-423. S will handle the situation. Be ready to record. The final piece fell into place when a former Skynet employee contacted Malcolm through Jason Williams. The whistleblower provided internal emails discussing Operation Johnson, a coordinated effort to undermine cyber fusion before their protocol launch. Zara's name appeared repeatedly as a potential pressure point. Malcolm sent the complete package to Danielle Washington, who spent 3 days verifying every detail independently. "This is the definition of a smoking gun," she told Malcolm after completing her review. "I can run this tomorrow." "Do it," Malcolm authorized. The next morning, Danielle's explosive exposé appeared simultaneously in print and online: Corporate Racism, How Skynet Technologies Weaponize Discrimination Against Competitors' Family. The article methodically laid out the evidence, including stills from the unedited security footage, transcripts of Dr. Parker's audio recording, the damning text messages, and details of Operation Johnson. It contrasted the viral edited video with the complete footage, showing exactly how the narrative had been manipulated. Within hours, public opinion began to shift dramatically. #corporate racism and #justice for Zara began trending nationwide. The unedited videos spread rapidly across social media platforms, with many who had initially condemned Zara now expressing outrage at the deception. Southwest Airlines issued a hasty statement: "We are aware of the serious allegations regarding a recent incident. We have placed flight attendant Stephanie Reynolds on administrative leave pending a thorough investigation." Southwest Airlines does not condone discrimination of any kind. Meridian Financial released an even terser announcement: "Thomas Blackwell has been placed on administrative leave while we investigate his alleged involvement in activities inconsistent with our corporate values." Skynet Technologies maintained complete silence initially, their stock dropping 15% by market close as investors reacted to the scandal. That evening, Malcolm received a call from an unexpected source. "Malcolm, it's Victor Barnes." "Victor," Malcolm acknowledged coolly. "I'm surprised to hear from you." "This has gone too far," Barnes said, abandoning his usual polish. "You've made your point. What will it take to end this? Name your price." Malcolm laughed without humor. "You still don't understand, do you? This was never about money. It was about dignity. It was about my daughter being humiliated because your company thought her race made her an easy target. These were rogue actions by individual employees," Barnes insisted. "Skynet as a company had no knowledge." "Save it for your press conference," Malcolm interrupted. "The evidence speaks for itself." As Malcolm ended the call, Zara entered his home office. For the first time since the incident, she was smiling. "Dad, have you seen social media? Everything's shifting. People are apologizing for believing the edited video. Dr. Parker's being called a hero." Malcolm nodded. "The truth has a way of emerging eventually." "And Thomas Blackwell?" Zara asked. "Any news?" As if on cue, Malcolm's phone buzzed with a news alert: Meridian Financial terminates VP Thomas Blackwell following racial incident investigation. He showed the screen to Zara. "Justice moves quickly sometimes." Zara's expression sobered. "It's not over though, is it?" "No," Malcolm agreed. "This is just the beginning. But now we're the ones controlling the narrative." Later that evening, Malcolm received another call, this time from Congressman James Lewis, chair of the House Committee on Corporate Ethics. "Mr. Johnson, in light of recent revelations, the committee would like to invite you to testify about corporate discrimination practices. Would you be willing to appear before Congress next month?" Malcolm glanced at Zara, who was watching intently. "Yes, Congressman. But only if my daughter can testify as well. Her experience should be heard directly, not filtered through others." "Of course. Ms. Johnson's testimony would be invaluable." After ending the call, Malcolm joined Zara on the couch. "How do you feel about addressing Congress?" Zara took a deep breath. "Terrified. But ready." Malcolm squeezed her hand. "That's my girl." The Skynet Technologies board of directors convened an emergency meeting at 7 a.m., 2 days after Danielle Washington's exposé broke. The company's stock had plummeted 23%, and institutional investors were demanding answers. Victor Barnes entered the boardroom to find all 12 board members already seated, expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed fury. "Victor, what the hell is going on?" demanded Elizabeth Chen, the board's senior member. "We're hemorrhaging market value while you maintain radio silence." Barnes straightened his tie nervously. "We're preparing a comprehensive response." "It's too late for that," interrupted Robert Hayes, representing the company's largest investor. "The evidence is damning. Operation Johnson. Targeting a competitor's daughter. Using racial discrimination as a weapon. This is beyond unethical, it's potentially criminal." "We had no knowledge of these actions," Barnes insisted. "This was Bradley Reynolds acting independently with the Blackwells. The company never authorized." "Stop," Chen cut him off. "Your chief security officer reports directly to you. Are you claiming you had no knowledge of an operation targeting our main competitor's family?" Barnes hesitated just long enough for the board to draw their own conclusions. "We need to get ahead of this," Hayes said grimly. "Bradley Reynolds must be terminated immediately. And Victor, the board will need to consider whether current leadership can weather this storm." Across town at Southwest Airlines headquarters, a similar scene unfolded. CEO Richard Harrison faced his executive team, legal counsel, and PR department. "How did we miss Stephanie Reynolds' history of complaints?" Harrison demanded. "Why wasn't this pattern identified years ago?" The head of HR shifted uncomfortably. "The complaints were handled individually at the regional level. When viewed separately, they didn't trigger system-wide alerts." "Well, they're triggering nationwide outrage now," Harrison snapped. "The Congressional Committee on Corporate Ethics is launching an investigation, our stock is down, and customers are canceling flights in protest." "Sir," the chief legal counsel interjected, "given the evidence, particularly Dr. Parker's recording and the unedited security footage, I strongly recommend terminating Ms. Reynolds immediately rather than keeping her on administrative leave." Harrison nodded grimly. "Make it happen. And prepare a public apology to Zara Johnson. A real one, not corporate boilerplate." Meanwhile, at Meridian Financial, the fallout continued. Amanda Blackwell arrived at her real estate office to find her access card deactivated. Her manager met her in the lobby, expression grave. "Amanda, in light of your involvement in the Southwest Airlines incident, the company is terminating your real estate license sponsorship, effective immediately." "What? You can't do that." Amanda protested. "I just recorded what happened. The unedited videos show you and your husband deliberately targeting Ms. Johnson. Additionally, your text messages with Bradley Reynolds have been published. This isn't just about recording an incident, it's about participating in a coordinated effort to discriminate against and humiliate a young black woman." Amanda's face paled. "Thomas was just fired yesterday. We have a mortgage, expenses. You should have considered that before participating in corporate sabotage and racial targeting," her manager replied without sympathy. "Your personal belongings will be shipped to your home address." As corporate consequences mounted, Zara Johnson received an unexpected email from TechFuture, the company whose interview she had missed due to the incident. "Dear Ms. Johnson, in light of recent events, we would like to extend our sincere apology for not providing more understanding regarding your missed interview. We were unaware of the circumstances and responded inappropriately. We would be honored to reschedule your interview at your convenience. Your algorithm work is exceptional, and we believe you would be a valuable addition to our team. Sincerely, Samantha Torres, Director of Talent Acquisition, TechFuture Incorporated." Zara showed the email to her father. "They want to reschedule." Malcolm studied his daughter's expression. "And how do you feel about that?" Zara hesitated. "Honestly, I'm not sure. Their initial response was to dismiss me entirely. Now that my name is in the news, suddenly they're interested again. It feels opportunistic. Trust your instincts, Malcolm advised. There will be many people and organizations suddenly discovering their conscience now that the truth is out. You don't owe any of them your talent. Later that day, Malcolm addressed the Cyberfusion staff. The company's stock had not only recovered its initial losses but had climbed to a new high as investors responded positively to Malcolm's principled stand. I want to thank everyone for their support during this challenging time, he began. What happened to Zara was personal for me as a father, but it also reflects broader issues that affect many of us in this room. He surveyed the diverse faces before him, still not as diverse as he would like, but progress from where they'd started. Cyberfusion has always stood for innovation, but innovation requires diverse perspectives and experiences. Moving forward, we're launching a new industry-wide initiative focused on increasing representation and addressing systemic discrimination in tech. The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause. Already, several major tech companies had quietly reached out, expressing interest in joining the initiative rather than risking being perceived as standing on the wrong side of history. That evening, as Malcolm and Zara prepared for dinner, the doorbell rang. Jason Williams stood on the porch, holding a thick manila envelope. "You're going to want to see this," he said, placing the envelope on the dining table. Bradley Reynolds gave a full statement to federal investigators this afternoon. He's cooperating in exchange for immunity. Malcolm opened the envelope and began reading. Reynolds had provided detailed documentation of Skynet's systematic efforts to undermine competitors through various unethical means, with Operation Johnson being just the most recent example. "This goes beyond Victor Barnes," Malcolm said, scanning the documents. Their entire executive team was involved. "There's more," Jason added. "The FBI is investigating potential violations of federal civil rights laws. This could result in criminal charges, not just civil penalties." Zara absorbed this news silently. Justice was unfolding on multiple fronts, yet she still struggled with the aftermath of her public humiliation. Despite the vindication, she felt anxious about flying, about being in public spaces where she might be recorded or targeted again. Malcolm noticed her expression. "What's on your mind, baby girl?" "All these consequences for the people involved, it's justice, I know. But it doesn't erase what happened." She hesitated. "I still feel watched everywhere I go. I still second-guess every interaction, wondering if I'm about to become another viral moment." Malcolm nodded solemnly. "The damage doesn't disappear overnight. But you're stronger than this moment, Zara. You always have been." "How do you know?" Malcolm smiled. "Because you're my daughter. And because I've watched you overcome every obstacle placed in your path since the day you were born." The next morning brought news that Victor Barnes had resigned as CEO of Skynet Technologies. The company issued a lengthy statement apologizing for the reprehensible actions taken against the Johnson family and pledging a complete restructuring of leadership and corporate culture. As Malcolm prepared for his congressional testimony, scheduled for the following week, he received a call from Lawrence Winters, Cyberfusion's chairman. "Malcolm, the board has unanimously approved your diversity initiative. We're allocating $50 million in initial funding and making it a core company priority." "Thank you, Lawrence. That's a significant commitment." "It's the right thing to do," Winters replied. "And, if I'm being completely honest, it's also good business. Your stand against Skynet has resonated with consumers and investors alike. Integrity, it turns out, has market value." Malcolm ended the call with mixed feelings. He appreciated the support but wondered how much was genuine commitment versus opportunistic positioning. Either way, the door for real change had opened, and he intended to push it wide. The congressional hearing room hummed with anticipation. News cameras lined the back wall, and every seat in the public gallery was filled. The House Committee on Corporate Ethics had convened a special session titled "Discrimination as a Corporate Weapon," examining systemic racism in American business. Malcolm Johnson sat at the witness table, Zara beside him. Across the room, representatives from Southwest Airlines, Skynet Technologies, and Meridian Financial occupied another table, their discomfort evident. Congressman Lewis called the hearing to order. Today we examine disturbing allegations of corporate-sponsored discrimination. We'll hear testimony regarding an incident that, while shocking in its execution, may reflect broader patterns requiring legislative remedy. Malcolm was called to testify first. He spoke without notes, his deep voice commanding the room's complete attention. Distinguished committee members, I appear before you not primarily as a CEO, but as a father whose daughter was deliberately targeted because of her race. The evidence has established that my competitor, Skynet Technologies, coordinated with individuals at Southwest Airlines and Meridian Financial to humiliate my daughter, betting that racial stereotypes would make their manufactured narrative believable. He continued, outlining the evidence with methodical precision. This case represents something more insidious than individual bigotry. It demonstrates how racism can be weaponized as a corporate tactic, exploiting societal prejudices for market advantage. When Malcolm concluded, Congresswoman Patricia Alvarez leaned toward her microphone. Mr. Johnson, beyond your personal situation, do you believe this represents a broader pattern in American business? Without question, Congresswoman. What makes this case unusual isn't that racial discrimination occurred, but that we were able to prove the corporate orchestration behind it. Most victims don't have the resources to expose such schemes. Next, Zara took the oath. Despite her youth, she spoke with composed eloquence. I was removed from that flight because a flight attendant and 2 passengers decided I didn't belong in first class. They didn't know I was a Stanford student with a 4.0 GPA. They didn't know my father runs a tech company. They saw only my skin color and decided that was enough to judge me. She paused, meeting the eyes of committee members. What happened to me was traumatic, but I recognize my privilege in having a father with resources to fight back. Most people who experience discrimination have no recourse. Their stories never make headlines. Their humiliation never receives justice. The testimony shifted to representatives from the implicated companies. Southwest Airlines CEO, Richard Harrison, offered a public apology to Zara. Ms. Johnson, there is no excuse for how you were treated on our aircraft. Stephanie Reynolds has been terminated, and we're implementing comprehensive anti-bias training for all employees. Stephanie Reynolds herself had been subpoenaed to appear but offered little beyond a carefully worded statement claiming misunderstanding rather than malice. I never intended to discriminate, she insisted, despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. I was simply following what I believed were company protocols. Skynet's interim CEO, having replaced the disgraced Victor Barnes, struggled to distance the company from Operation Johnson. These actions, while undertaken by former employees, do not reflect our corporate values, she claimed, to audible scoffs from the gallery. As the hearing progressed, Congressman Lewis raised a critical question, Mr. Johnson, what legislative remedies would you suggest to prevent such incidents in the future? Malcolm leaned forward. First, strengthen whistleblower protections so employees can report discriminatory practices without fear. Second, increase penalties for corporations found to engage in systematic discrimination. Third, require transparency in how companies handle discrimination complaints, preventing them from being buried through settlements and NDAs. The hearing lasted over 5 hours, broadcast live nationwide. By its conclusion, #corporate accountability was trending on every social platform. Outside the Capitol, Malcolm and Zara faced a crowd of reporters. One shouted, Mr. Johnson, do you feel vindicated by today's proceedings? Malcolm shook his head. This isn't about vindication. It's about transformation. The systems that allowed my daughter to be targeted remain largely intact. True justice requires changing those systems. In the weeks following the hearing, change began manifesting in concrete ways. Southwest Airlines announced the creation of an independent oversight board to review discrimination complaints, with Dr. William Parker invited to serve as its chair. Meridian Financial, seeking to repair its damaged reputation, pledged $30 million to support minority business development and implemented new diversity requirements for executive positions. Skynet Technologies faced the most severe consequences. With multiple federal investigations underway and clients defecting to competitors, its stock continued to plummet. Industry analysts began suggesting the once dominant company might not survive the scandal. Meanwhile, Cyberfusion's new diversity initiative attracted partners from across the tech landscape. Companies that had initially remained silent during Zara's ordeal now eagerly associated themselves with Malcolm's efforts, though he viewed their sudden enthusiasm with healthy skepticism. Convenient allies, he remarked to Jason after one particularly effusive CEO left his office. Where were they when Zara was being vilified online? They're business people, Jason replied pragmatically. They follow winds of profit and public opinion. Does it matter if they're doing the right thing for the wrong reasons? Perhaps not, Malcolm conceded. But I won't forget who stood with us when it was difficult, and who waited until it was advantageous. For Zara, the aftermath brought unexpected challenges. Multiple prestigious companies that had previously ignored her suddenly extended internship offers, each emphasizing their commitment to diversity. I can't help feeling like a token now, she confided to her father. Do they want me for my abilities, or to prove they're on the right side of this issue? Probably both, Malcolm answered honestly. The question is whether that matters, as long as the door is open. Zara considered this. I think it does matter. I don't want opportunities based on sympathy or public relations value. Then create your own path, Malcolm suggested. You've never needed anyone's permission to be exceptional. Their conversation was interrupted by a security alert. Another death threat had arrived at the Johnson residence. Despite widespread public support, a vocal minority had responded to Malcolm and Zara's advocacy with vicious hostility. That's the seventh this week, Malcolm noted, reviewing the security report with disturbing calmness. Does it ever make you want to stop? Zara asked. Just go back to running the company and avoid the spotlight? Malcolm studied his daughter thoughtfully. Every meaningful change comes with resistance, baby girl. The question we each have to answer is whether the cause is worth the cost. And for you? Zara pressed. I built Cyberfusion to create technology that improves lives. But what good is technological progress without social progress alongside it? He squeezed her hand. What happened to you was painful, but it opened a door for conversation and change that might have remained closed otherwise. Zara nodded slowly. I've been thinking about that too. Maybe this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, not just developing algorithms, but helping change the environment those algorithms will operate in. Malcolm smiled with pride. His daughter had always been resilient, but this experience had revealed a strength even he hadn't fully recognized. Whatever you decide, he told her, remember that your value isn't defined by how others see you, but by how you see yourself. As they prepared for the next phase of their advocacy, both Johnsons understood the road ahead would not be easy. Corporate systems resistant to change wouldn't transform overnight. Backlash would continue. But something fundamental had shifted, not just in public discourse, but in their own sense of purpose. For Malcolm, the fight had evolved beyond corporate competition or even personal justice for Zara. It had become about creating lasting structural change. For Zara, the traumatic experience had clarified her own mission, using her technical skills and newly public platform to ensure others wouldn't face similar discrimination. Together, they represented something powerful, the combination of established influence and fresh perspective, both committed to the same vision of transformation. 6 months after the congressional hearing, Zara Johnson stood in San Francisco International Airport, boarding pass in hand. This was her first flight since the incident that had changed her life. Gate 23, she murmured, checking the monitors. The same number as that fateful day in Atlanta. The coincidence wasn't lost on her. She had rescheduled her Tech Future interview, though her goals had evolved significantly in the intervening months. Where once she had dreamed simply of advancing her own career, she now envisioned something more impactful. The security checkpoint loomed ahead. Zara took a deep breath, consciously releasing the tension in her shoulders. Though the viral video had long since been discredited, she still felt the phantom eyes of judgment watching her every move in public spaces. "Ms. Johnson." Zara turned to find a young TSA agent smiling at her. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said quietly. "Your testimony changed things. We had new training last month specifically addressing racial profiling. It's making a difference." Unexpected emotion tightened Zara's throat. "Thank you for telling me that." As she continued toward her gate, Zara reflected on the past 6 months. The corporate fallout had been substantial and sustained. Skynet Technologies, once a tech giant, had collapsed under the weight of scandal and federal investigations. Its assets were being acquired by a consortium led by Techverse, a smaller but innovative company founded by Darius Williams, one of the few black CEOs in Silicon Valley besides her father. Malcolm's industry-wide diversity initiative had transformed hiring and retention practices at multiple companies. CyberFusion had released its revolutionary security protocol to critical acclaim, and Malcolm had leveraged the moment to advocate for greater representation in tech development. "Our algorithms reflect the biases of their creators," he often said in interviews. True innovation requires diverse perspectives at every level of creation. Zara boarded her flight with cautious optimism. As she settled into her first-class seat, she noticed the flight attendant approaching, a middle-aged white man whose face triggered unexpected recognition. Bradley Reynolds. Stephanie's husband. Former deputy director at Skynet. Zara froze, her heart racing. What was he doing here? Working as a flight attendant? Reynolds had noticed her too. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the cabin seemed to disappear around them. This man had been instrumental in orchestrating her humiliation. He had lost his executive position when the scheme was exposed, but Zara had never expected to encounter him again, especially not like this. Reynolds approached her seat slowly. Zara's hand moved instinctively toward the call button. "Ms. Johnson," he said quietly. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know how deeply I regret my role in what happened to you." Zara remained silent, studying his face. The arrogance she had glimpsed in courtroom photos was gone, replaced by something that looked remarkably like genuine remorse. "Losing everything made me reevaluate who I was and what I valued," Reynolds continued. "I'm not asking for sympathy, I deserved the consequences. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to become someone better." He gestured to his uniform. "This entry-level position was the only job I could get. It's humbling, starting over at 54. But it's also been educational. I've experienced how people treat service workers, especially when they don't look like what others expect." Zara found her voice. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because your courage in speaking out didn't just change corporations. It changed individuals too. Including me." Reynolds hesitated. "I've been working with a diversity advocacy group, sharing my experience from the other side. How easy it is to weaponize bias when you've never examined your own." The irony wasn't lost on Zara. This man who had once seen her race as a vulnerability to exploit was now experiencing his own form of awakening. "I hope you have a comfortable flight, Ms. Johnson," Reynolds said, preparing to move on. "If you need anything at all, please let me know." "Actually," Zara said, surprising herself, "I would like some water." "For medication." A flash of recognition crossed Reynolds' face. He understood the reference to her original request that had been so callously denied by his wife. "Right away, Ms. Johnson." As Reynolds moved to fulfill her request, Zara turned to look out the window. She hadn't forgiven him, exactly, but there was something powerful in this moment, this reversal of positions, this evidence that transformation was possible even in unlikely places. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father, "Proud of you, baby girl. Change the world today." Zara smiled. Malcolm had known how difficult this first flight would be for her. His unwavering support had been her foundation throughout the entire ordeal. The Johnson family had established a scholarship for minority students pursuing careers in technology, using part of the settlement funds from Southwest Airlines and Meridian Financial. The first cohort of 20 students would begin their studies in the fall. Reynolds returned with her water. "Here you are, Ms. Johnson." "Thank you," she replied, then added, "I heard you're working with advocacy groups now." Reynolds nodded. "Yes. Sharing my story seems to reach people who might dismiss other voices. When someone like me admits to participating in systematic discrimination, it becomes harder for others to deny it exists." "That's actually valuable," Zara acknowledged. "It doesn't erase what I did," Reynolds said. "Nothing can. But if some good can come from it." He moved on to assist other passengers. Zara sipped her water, contemplating the strange paths justice sometimes took. The flight landed in San Francisco on schedule. As Zara collected her belongings, Reynolds approached one last time. "Ms. Johnson, I know words are inadequate, but I am truly sorry for the pain I caused you and your father." Zara studied him for a moment. "Mr. Reynolds, I don't forgive you for my sake. But I acknowledge your efforts to change for everyone else's sake. That matters." He nodded, understanding the distinction. Outside the terminal, a car waited to take Zara to her rescheduled interview. But it wasn't with Tech Future. After much reflection, she had declined their belated offer, along with the sudden interest from other companies that had previously ignored her talents. Instead, she was meeting with Darius Williams, CEO of Techverse. The company acquiring Skynet's assets was implementing a complete cultural reset, and Williams had approached Zara with an unexpected proposition. Leading a new division focused on developing algorithms that detected and corrected for bias. "Use your brilliance to build safeguards against the very discrimination you experienced," he had told her. "Help us create technology that makes bias harder, not easier, to implement." The irony wasn't lost on her, potentially working with the very systems Skynet had developed, but repurposing them toward equity rather than exploitation. The Techverse headquarters gleamed in the San Francisco sunlight. As Zara entered the lobby, she noticed executives watching her with barely concealed nervousness. Her name carried weight now, not just as Malcolm Johnson's daughter, but as someone who had exposed corporate wrongdoing at the highest levels. Williams greeted her warmly. "Zara, welcome. Our team is excited to hear your thoughts on the bias detection project." "Before we start," Zara said, "I'd like to be clear about something. I'm not interested in symbolic positions or being anyone's diversity credential. If we work together, it will be because my technical contributions are valued." Williams smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way. Your algorithm work speaks for itself. The perspective you bring is an additional asset, not the primary one." As they walked toward the conference room, Zara felt a sense of purpose crystallizing within her. The humiliation she had experienced on that flight had been painful, but it had also revealed her path forward with unexpected clarity. She wasn't just writing code anymore. She was helping rewrite systems, both technological and human, that had long perpetuated inequity. Her father had changed the tech industry by building a company that demonstrated black excellence at the highest level. She would transform it by ensuring its innovations served everyone equally. "Ready?" Williams asked as they reached the boardroom doors. Zara nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Ready." The same executives who had once dismissed similar concepts when presented by diversity advocates now sat attentively as Zara outlined her vision for bias-detecting algorithms. Their discomfort was visible but irrelevant to her purpose. "The technology we build shapes society's future," she concluded. "We have the opportunity, and responsibility, to ensure that future is more equitable than our present." Not through symbolic gestures, but through fundamental design choices in the systems we create. As the room broke into applause, Zara caught sight of her reflection in the glass wall. She saw not just Malcolm Johnson's daughter, not just a victim of discrimination who had fought back, but a woman charting her own course, using the very obstacles placed in her path as building blocks for something transformative. The journey had been painful, but it had led her exactly where she needed to be. This story reveals powerful truths about discrimination in modern America. First, racism often hides behind policies and protocols that appear neutral but are selectively enforced. Zara's experience shows how quickly stereotypes can override accomplishments and credentials when bias enters the equation. Second, justice requires resources. Malcolm's position as a CEO gave Zara access to tools most victims of discrimination lack: legal representation, media connections, and corporate influence. This highlights the importance of creating accessible pathways to justice for everyone. Third, corporate accountability matters. When businesses weaponize discrimination for profit, they must face consequences beyond mere financial settlements. True accountability means structural change and leadership transformation. Fourth, personal resilience can transform trauma into purpose. Zara didn't just recover from her experience, she redirected her talents toward preventing similar injustices through technology. Finally, allyship takes courage. Dr. Parker's willingness to speak up when others remain silent reminds us that combating discrimination requires active participation, not passive disapproval. The most important lesson remains that systematic change happens when we refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. By challenging discriminatory systems rather than just individual actors, we create opportunities for lasting transformation. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and felt powerless to stop it? Or perhaps you've experienced it firsthand like Zara. Share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters in this crucial conversation. What would you have done in Malcolm's position? Would you have pursued justice publicly or settled privately? Let us know by typing "justice" if you'd fight publicly, or "peace" if you prefer a private resolution. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help it reach others who need to hear this message. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that expose injustice and celebrate resilience. And if you know someone who could draw strength from Zara's journey, share this video with them today. Thank you for joining us in this important conversation. Remember, lasting change begins when brave individuals refuse to accept discrimination as normal. May we all find the courage to stand against injustice when we encounter it, whether in an airport, boardroom, or anywhere else prejudice tries to take root.